If there are any among this people who should ever apostatize, prepare your backs for a good whipping.
The two reactions implied in your question.
Travis Wingoodsall. I've been up since 1. I'm ready to crash. But I need to get this video out. The new proposal for the psychological concentration camp has gone nationwide. And so I get to redo this video in a different presentation for you. Assuming I don't fall asleep live on camera. The MSNBC is the one particular one I watched to see what they thought of it. And they were talking about it as an incarceration camp, not as a treatment center, because they're going off of the proposal describing it and how it would function. These are people who are on the outside who are not in the Mormon speak. And this is how they are perceiving it from how it's being reported. And so they see it as a place for indefinite incarceration. In case you forgot, Brian David Mitchell was going to be indefinitely incarcerated at the Provo Asylum. We're going to have to cover that again. And until Orrin Hatch made it so that it was federally charged, and then he was magically cured of his mental retardation, which does not have a cure. They mentioned that no other state in the United States is so deeply obsessed with psychology and treatment centers and indefinite incarceration as Utah. Only Utah. And it has a historical backing for this as to why. And so that is also disturbing. And then they say that it only has psychologists that are involved. There are no medical doctors. This is also very disturbing. Utah is the one and only one state that refused to follow the community, what was it called again? Community Mental Health Act. October 31st, yesterday was the anniversary, 1963. President John F. Kennedy signed it into law that we are to do away with all mental asylums, and we are to now require that those with mental retardation, as it was called back then, be put into the care of medical doctors. Thus, the state of Utah, refusing to obey, not only had him murdered 22 days later, they also just changed the name from asylum to hospital. We're conforming and complying. No. Again, they love to play the name game, claiming about a name when the doctrine is something far evil. Always check to see how things are run, not the title that they give it. So yes, in this proposal for the new concentration camp of human trafficking of the homeless, mentally retarded, and druggies and criminals, that's how they think of everybody. All those different groups are all considered the same and all lumped together. If you're mentally retarded, you're a druggie, mental criminal, and homeless. They don't want to separate them. That's why the shelters for Gail Miller's concentration camp of hell of human trafficking was put there right by the sheriff's station, the Salt Lake County Jail, and Valley Behavioral Services. Their headquarters. They did that on purpose. Because that's how they see the people. That's why they're abusing them. They see homeless as criminal. They see druggies as criminal. They see mentally retarded as criminal. So that they can then treat them as such. I've done the talk about Operation Rio Grande. That was their whole plan. Lock them up. One congressman spent the night, and then the next day, Jesus revealed to me how to do it. It's so easy. I can fix the problem. I know now. Lock them up? Really? Mm-hmm. Yep. That is Utah for you. Background history reveals why. And yeah, I can go back to the Danites, but we won't go that far, but we could. Because that's a part of it. And so this is exposing Utah that they don't want to be exposed for, because no other state is doing it as extremist as Utah is. And it's going nationwide now. This is why it's important to talk about it. So, World War II, Nazi Germany. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints fully supported and approved of Hitler's actions in Nazi Germany to the Jews. Moroni and the swastika goes over the horror stories of how the church was involved, along with many others not Mormon, like companies that sold in Nazi Germany, and other nations that supported Nazi Germany. Even America supported Nazi Germany because we dominated in Congress with the KKK. And it wasn't until it was against our financial interests that we then got involved. But after World War II, the CIA brought Nazi psychologists who were performing human experimentations on the Jews to torture and murder them to the United States of America. Other nations were doing the same. It would then become called Operation Paperclip for other scientists being brought over. Specifically, aviation was one of the primary ones for Operation Paperclip. But the psychologists were primarily put to work to try to figure out how to brainwash masses of people. And so MK Ultra got implemented, as that was turned into a movie the other year. And it's where they use drugging, LSD, to alter the behavior of people so that they can be controlled. So yes, psychology today has a direct link with Big Pharma to drug people with the drugs being brought out by Big Pharma. And because psychologists are not medical doctors, they don't have a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. If you have a medical doctor who's a psychologist, then they need to be fired, locked up in prison, lose their license to practice. Because it's a contradictory job to be a psychologist and a medical doctor at the same time. Because as a psychologist, you are, by definition, causing harm. You are taking away the agency of another person. You are bullying them and abusing them with name-calling. And then you are drugging them unnecessarily to cause harm to their bodies, to their lives, their liberty, and their property, removing them from society. And so you cannot legitimately be called a doctor in the medical sense. So the schools have PhDs, thus people get called doctors by title only. Again, title, no actual substance behind the title. A common trait of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Titles of prophet, seer, revelator, and not translator. If you've followed my channel, you know exactly what I mean by this. It's the church's official policy, official statement. We deny the gifts. We don't have them, we won't do them. It's just titles. And so Utah became a prime target for this operation. Stanley Smith Stevens, Mormon, born in Utah, in Ogden, did his work in Colorado, is the one who came up with the dichotomous and non-dichotomous categorization of human behavior, which is a fallacy argument in and of itself. Everything about psychology is a fraud because it uses fallacy arguments. If you don't know what a fallacy is, it's something that is not sound, logical. And by this, they name call and bully a person based on the symptoms of outward behavior. Thus, the controlling of human behavior is what they're trying to do. And so every time there's a school shooting or some traumatic event that occurs, even with the Michigan attack and the fire, psychologists were brought to the scene for anybody who needs help. Charlie Kirk's assassination, likewise, the news came out and said, psychologists are standing by for anybody who needs counseling. No, it's to further abuse them. Because they have you get over it, change your behavior towards it. And this is how you create a sociopath. And they should know they created it with their name-calling bullying. The whole bite me model that is used to identify cult groups, likewise, was created by a psychologist who psychology in and of itself is a cult group. You go over the bite model and you see that psychologists are exactly the same way. There's some extra stuff that they're not telling you that needs to be included in the bite model. But yeah, it's exactly the same. They are beaming motors to the extreme. Just like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They do the same exact tactics as psychology, using fallacy arguments to brainwash the masses, to get them to do their will. And so the dichotomous categorization is one way or the other. This is the divide and conquer from the art of war, where you send in sleeper cell spies into your enemy's civilization, town, village, whatever, and they live among them. And they then rise up, everybody thinks they're one of them, and they start spreading division, discord, contention, to divide the people up. And you got to have the two groups. You can't just do a one-pronged against the nation. You've got to have the people divided concerning their interpretation of the civilization. And so you've seen that in America, as these Nazis have thanked their American liberators by destroying America and shutting down the federal government and shutting down America. And we're all going to die in a civil war in the coming days. So you've got MAGA and Antifa, as the current names are. With Steve Bannon, after rigging the 2016 election here in America, he went over to his European tour to rig those elections. And that's when he began using the terminology, instead of conservative and liberal, and the various names for that, he created globalism and popularism. Globalism was your liberals, populism is your conservatives, right? I think so. Let me check. Too tired. Ugh. Globalism has been seen as a pillar of a liberal international order, along with democratic governance. Yeah, I was correct. So yes, again, changing names, but it's the same process. See how this works? They deceive you. So we no longer call people mentally retarded unless you're bullying them. But that's how it was. That's the term they used, mental retardation. Mentally retarded. And so now you'll hear them talk about special. Or mental health. Mental behavior. And sometimes they'll even drop mental. Your brain health or your emotional health or whatever crap. They change the names to try to deceive people into thinking that it's to take them away from the bullying name calling that it is, trying to soften it up for people so that people accept it, because it's always been condemned and criticized and shunned by popular society in America. And now both sides of the dichotomy are both using it for a weaponization against the other. It's very evil what these Nazis did to America and got everybody to be fooled by it. And so the non-dichotomous is where you get the spectrum. And this is how Steve Bannon overthrew the 2016 election with the Facebook data sold to Russia that Russia then used to do the ads on Facebook to rig the election in that one way. There are many ways that it was rigged, but that was the one for the non-dichotomous of Stanley Smith Stevens from his work of fraud. And it's called Spectrum, as you've probably heard about it. It's where a psychologist will ask a question, but you only have 4 answers to choose from. And sometimes they'll have more, but they're feeling related. And so the color test that I was forced to take in grade school so that the teacher can find out who the troublemaker kids are. It should never have been used in schools. But the Disney princess, which Disney princess are you? Questionnaire for the 2016 election. I saw YouTube using it for the 2024 election. They were not happy with me that I exposed this. But nonetheless, if you're going to be taking money from criminals, you should be called out. They're still doing the Cypress ads. Dear God. That's sex trafficking and dating phishing scam through AI. But yeah, when you're able to brainwash the masses, you literally can commit crimes and nobody will know. Right, Mormons? Mormons don't realize all the crimes that they commit because they're Mormon. It's the new normal for Mormons. It is cultural or traditional, as they will call it instead. And because Utah is its own state, controlled by the church, a lot of things are able to be gotten away with when outside of Utah it would not. And so the CIA, I also had them working on the theaters, putting in Coca-Cola and popcorn frames in the films to see if the public would subliminally desire to go buy popcorn and soda. And that's why the theaters jack up the prices. And people smuggle in other stuff. And then Larry Miller provided restaurants with his theaters so that you can bring the food into the theater anyway. But regardless, all of that is because of this attempt to brainwash the masses. Then you get the other extremists where they do more medical tortures on American citizens, not necessarily Jews, for plutonium testing and some of them incorporate both the drugging with the physical torture, which is where you get your alien abduction stuff, anal probing. But I'm deeply concerned with Congress pushing the aliens among us, having hearings in Congress and testimonials. You don't know what it is. You don't know it's from outer space. All you know is that you don't identify it. And yet the public hears that and goes, space aliens, demons. You can't make that leap. I was thinking ahead this morning, despite how tired I am. And he did it early, too. And so this is being pushed in the underground for the most part. The public doesn't know about it. Utah also gets targeted for other abuses, such as the nuclear testing out in Nevada. And Trump wants to renew it and nuke the St. Georgians again. Whether they're called St. Georgians or not. Again, naming. Has nothing to do with the name. It's the definition behind it. That determines what the name is. And that's what Mormons will not tell you. It's the doctrine of Lucifer, but they say it's Jesus. See, it says Jesus. But you want to take away my agency, and that's Lucifer's plan of happiness. You're lying to me, and Lucifer is the father of all lies. And then they get angry, and then it becomes the Order of Nehor, where they demand you pay them tithing with threats of violence. The Order of the Danites. So yeah, it does apply. It does apply. This pretty much is a spin-off or a sequel to the previous ones I've been doing lately. And the CIA recruited Mormons returned from mission because they go around the world, they speak the different languages, they already integrated as missionaries, and so they're perfect to go undercover around the world for the CIA, to speak the language, to infiltrate and do whatever criminal operations they do around the world. And so the CIA has Mormons that are bringing these Nazis to America and to Utah. And doing the experimentations with psychology in Utah. And this is when John F. Kennedy, October 31st, 1963, says we got to stop this asylum practice in America. We can't have these psychologists indefinitely incarcerating people and torturing and drugging, doing human experimentations. We need medical doctors for people who are mentally retarded. And so thus the Community Mental Health Act was signed. And then 22 days later, Mormon CIA assassinated him. It's all been leaked. In fact, the Watergate scandal was about the picture at that very corner, showing George Poppy Bush, along with some Mormons there at the corner, working for the CIA, as the shooters were in position. Shooters. You didn't believe the patsy did it, did you? They framed and blamed him just like they're doing to Tyler. But dear God, there was no way he could have done it from that building. It couldn't have been done from that room with the gun that he had. And it's the same thing with Tyler. Same thing with Tyler. Mormons are at it again. And so the church likewise made that change. Stanford, I saw this morning, had sent me an email that just happened to be talking about LDS family services. And so as I was looking over it, I saw the dates so that I now can incorporate those with the video rather than just generally talking about it separately. 1969, the church decided to turn family services, which was more medical for mothers giving birth, that type of thing. Now the church says we want to have it run by the priesthood. And Ashton was involved with that, from what I read. And so this is 6 years later. The Utah Asylum, being called the hospital now, is still down in Provo. They would go on to rebuild a new facility, calling it the Utah State Hospital. And again, names, don't get fooled by names. This is how McCarthy in the Red Scare with his congressional hearings was able to fool people because he was a Republican in the sense of Lincoln Republicans, but Lincoln was Democrat in platform. And it's McCarthy that did the switch. The Democrats were the KKK platform. They were Democrats. And so with McCarthy, after World War II, what he did was flip the script. He's now upset with all these commies that we're being friendly with because they helped us in World War II. And so he starts accusing people of being commies and anti-American, and he then turns the Republican Party into the KKK party of the Democrats, as he was accusing them of turning communist. And thus why the deep state Dems are considered communist, socialist, Marxist, Antifa. Names. Don't pay attention to names, focus on the platforms. Both are wrong, by the way. Remember, false dichotomy, extremism, Stanley Smith Stevens, the Mormon. Because there are multiple causations for an outward behavior. That's why it's a fallacy. And so the spectrum part is branching out into multiple behaviors, not just the one or the other. And that's why they ask you the specific questions. And they'll generally ask a trap question and then ask you how you feel about it. You know, never, sometimes, almost never, whatever. It varies depending on the wording. Again, don't pay attention to the outward names. And so the church in '69 turned it into the priesthood, and it becomes more psychological at this point. They're not really wanting to do medical. In '74, 5 years later, they give up on the LDS hospital. They are cutting off their scientific branches of the church for businesses and such. The adoption agency, I think, was ended in 2014, and that's what gave rise to the Arizona Mormon who human trafficked the members from his mission out in the Philippines, the islands out there, from one of those, would bring them to Arizona and to Utah into certain houses. One of them was in West Valley, where I was living. When he got busted, he was just packing the houses with all these pregnant women giving birth to babies, and then taking the babies and then giving them to good Mormon household families with a mother and a father who were rich. That's human trafficking. Because again, when you're dealing with human beings, you got to be extremely careful not to be trafficking, because we have a monetary system of economy. And so doctors who have a Hippocratic oath to do no harm have to be extremely cautious not to addict their patients to keep coming back. They can't be involved in symptom management. They have to be actually treating the causation of an illness or disease or an injury. Because if they're just doing symptom management, then they get caught up in the opioid crisis that they did by Big Pharma, thanks to George Poppy Bush going into Afghanistan, or not, the other Bush going into Afghanistan. And providing the poppy fields for Big Pharma, that sure enough, when you see the rise of opioids in America with when we went into Afghanistan, yeah, exact timing. That's what it was all about. So this war on drugs was all crap. Again, don't pay attention to the naming, pay attention to the practice. That reveals what the true name is. And so you have to be careful not to traffic humans in our economy in America. You can't be in the business of kidnapping children and then slave and sex trafficking them in other states or around the world. But we do have that, but the government is supposed to be trying to shut that down so it doesn't happen. But it becomes a pretty big business with people who have the money to pay for it, and that's why it continues. Supply and demand. And so medical doctors who are in a legitimate field, not a criminal field, need to make sure that they keep their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. But like I said, psychologists don't have that Hippocratic oath. And so they do harm by their business. When they wrongfully diagnose somebody, which they get taught is right. Yeah, when somebody exhibits these kinds of behaviors, this is the diagnosis. And so this diagnosis then requires these particular drugs to treat that particular diagnosis. And the little kids who go to the BYU and U of U into those programs, they get taught this and they go, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And so when I was in the older singles ward, there were many who were involved in psychology, whether they were counselors, therapists, etc., who talked the talk. Oh, well, if you deny you're mentally retarded, that means you are mentally retarded. That's one of the symptoms. Very abusive. We are not going on a date. And they're all about the women are from Venus, men are from Mars crap books that came out from psychology back in the 90s, 80s, 90s. Who Moved My Cheese was done by Nazis who were torturing little rat animals, rats or mice, and depriving them of cheese. Exactly what's being done to America right now, by the way, in case you didn't know. They have brainwashed you into the dichotomous categorizations, and now they're taking away your cheese, metaphorically speaking, and literally if you buy cheese. No food for 42 million Americans. Just because the two judges said it's illegal doesn't mean you got your money today, is it? They are literally taking away your cheese. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints used that very book for their employees in the 2000s. How would I know about this? Because I was working for the church when they pulled that stunt. And so I read over it. I went, this is the doctrine of Lucifer. What the hell is this book doing with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day? Oh, Oh, the inverted pentagrams on the keystone and the doors of the Salt Lake Temple. Oh, this is what the doctrine is that the church leaders preach? Oh, we're the Order of Danites. We're not Mormon like Joseph Smith. I wish you would have told me. Not keep it a secret and expect people to figure it out, and if we don't figure it out, we get abused. And so, yeah, this is all a behavioral control. To lie, name call, bully, until you accept it, and then they then perform human experimentations on you to the extremist bullying. And so the church bailed because of Obama's Gay Marriage Act. That was their excuse to leave. But it's human trafficking. They were doing it quite cruelly to victims of rape at BYU specifically, or Ogden also has a problem with that. But Mormon girls who would get raped go to LDS Family Services. They're told, you can't have an abortion, it's illegal. You're a criminal if you get an abortion. You've been kicked out of BYU and you're excommunicated now. You're now an apostate, having been a victim of rape. And you have to have the baby, which, yeah, it ruins your body for life. And then guys tried to help you out by calling it MILF. To make you feel special again. Or support your local stripper. We're trying to help. Despite the church's abuse. And so, yeah, the bishops send the women to family services for reactivation and repentance by being put on drugs. And thus, Utah is the highest per capita of Mormon women who take drugs for depression, as we're the highest per capita for treatment centers and psychologists in the field, whether they're counselors, therapists, etc. The most incarcerated in all the world. It is extremist here in Utah. And all last year, reporting all throughout the year of all of the psychologists that are getting locked up in prison, the treatment centers getting shut down, and yet still you got KSL who keeps putting out psychological manipulation news. You know, studies show that paying tithing to the church makes you healthier and prosperous. Being sealed in the temple to your prostituted wife makes you happier. You can see the psychology behind it. There's an emotional benefit. That's the trap. Instead of solving the problems, they cover them up in the minds of the people, so that they literally are not living in reality. They have what the world calls beer goggles, where the reason why people go to a bar working for the weekend is so that the less attractive women will look more attractive to the guy, after he gets wasted on beer, and so that he then lowers his inhibitions to have sex with the woman for the weekend, which he was working for. It's that same type of thing with religion or psychology. It is a drugging without drugs, or if necessary, with drugs, in the case of psychology. Church, I am not aware of gives out drugs except through family services. There is the one YouTube woman who started last year, I think I remember her. In which she talks about how, as a teenage girl, she was sexually assaulted by a married priesthood holder. She told her bishop, and the bishop covered it up and ignored it. And so years go by, she's now ready to go on a mission. And so she goes to her bishop again to do the interview, and he asks, is there any problem in your life that has not been resolved by a priesthood authority that it needs to? And she brought up the rape again. So the bishop called the hotline, and they told him to send her to family services for a mental evaluation. They then said she's mentally retarded, put her on drugs, denied admission. I would hope everybody can see that as a scandal. I don't think she did, because she, in her videos, still talks about how she has the bipolar depression and is still taking drugs. She did not catch on to what they did to her, even though she knows what they did to her because of not punishing the priesthood holder who raped her or sexually assaulted her. But it's far worse than that, and she doesn't see it. And so I've talked about Oaks as his Easter video showed that he has tardive dyskinesia, and I made that special video. And then now that he's president, you see it more dominantly. It's getting worse. And it's to the point where he is not able to control it as easily. From earlier this year when it was noticeable, and now when, it's pretty much uncontrollable, and he has to have the other arm brace the arm that is braced on the armrest to try to keep it from shaking while he's doing a video. That's from drugging, from psychologists. Our president of the first presidency is mentally retarded, by definition, and by title. And I did the video yesterday or the day before about his mother and how abominable it was that they did what they did to her. And so it's been the mindset of the church to treat women that way, and by extension, family members. And so I can easily see how Dallin, or Dallas, as his new name is, he was given a new name. Would likewise be under the control of a psychologist. He is not in his right mind but I have caught him embracing Nazism too. And I can see that as Nazi psychologists with their practice, whether they were Nazis or students of students of students, whatever, how many generations of graduating classes when Oakes finally was put on drugs to cause the tardive dyskinesia. But with the church, with psychology that is extremist here in Utah, Oakes has that combination of ideology in his brain to be Nazi in his talks, to be abusive towards other people in positions of authority. And his cruelty already is being manifested very plainly, as I'm hearing from others that there are others who are also recognizing this neglect of Oakes as the new president of the church. And I tried to tell you guys they had no intention of having a first presidency. It was only because of me picking on them that they did it 17 days later. And plus, Trump is taking his sweet time and causing Armageddon. That also has to be factored in. And so the reason why is because the same reason why they don't announce specific apostles to be speaking to the young adults next year in their schedule that they came out with. They have the scheduled dates, but they don't know who the speakers are going to be yet. They've never done that. They've always known who the speakers are going to be for the next year. For this year, for example, they knew that Holland was going to be speaking when he did. Was it Sunday or Friday or whatever? Sunday, I guess, when the video came out. Because he tells us that he was assigned to speak, and it was in the church news for the whole year that he was going to speak. Because I went over it. Because I thought, well, do they have any more young adult devotionals? And I didn't see any. I thought that was strange. And then they come out in October and say we're doing away with temples. We're not announcing temples anymore, which means they stopped with the April conference, just like they stopped young adult devotionals. So I'm catching on to the bigger picture of what they're plotting. As I told you, they're the enemy. They're destroying the world. They're behind all of this. Everything that's going on can be traced back to the church. The puppet masters keeping it a secret from the rest of the world because they're the Danites. And so I've caught Nelson doing the Heil Hitler, or not Nelson, Oakes doing the Heil Hitler. A couple others also. I think Anderson, Christofferson, maybe Cook. I'd have to check, but I think we're up to 4 now. So, yeah, TV also, psychology was used, not just for the types of shows, to have social issues be talked about in the morning news, as everybody would come to school the next day talking about the shows. And so psychology was entering in. Lethal Weapon was anti-psychology with Mel Gibson in the movies. But then when Fox put out the TV series, they were embracing psychology. That was a clear flipping of the script for the major theme of Lethal Weapon, is that, you know, Mel Gibson, a veteran who had seen the horrors of war, who had his wife was murdered, as we would come to find out. And so he's dealing with the grief of the loss of his wife, and so he's living in a lesser quality of life, and so the psychologist is trying to recruit him so that she can earn her paycheck by saying that he's suicidal and that, you know, he needs to be put under her care. And he just outwits her with his hilarity, where she gets humiliated and proven wrong because she's trying to label him into a category box and he's not cooperating. And so Bad Boys 2, you get psychology being introduced as the whole police force has to do the woo-saw counsel therapy crying thing. Except for Mike Lowry gets to bang his therapist. But Martin Lawrence, he's stuck in therapy with a woman who's telling him he's angry. And he's not angry. And she goes, "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are. Your saying I'm angry is making me angry." This is the bullying of psychology. But TV was used to help promote psychology. You get Maury Povich and Jerry Springer, who do psychological shows. Dr. Phil, also doing it in a different format, having therapy sessions live. And you get, when did Frasier start? Because he's a therapist doing a radio show. I'm not sure. I mean, it was going on for 11 seasons, was it? So it could have overlapped into the 2000s. But regardless of when that started. But psychologists also crept into the school systems, and they got doctor-client confidentiality when they have no Hippocratic oath. And so when kids who are troubled, whether being the bully or the bullied, go to see the psychologist instead of the school principal, these children are being manipulated by the psychologist, and nobody's allowed to know about it. And so the kids began telling their parents that they're mutants, that they're subhuman, which later been given the name LGBTQIAPO+ in Canada 2S. These are not human characteristics. It is psychologists who created it. And then these kids embrace the bullying name-calling of their peers from the 80s, the homophobic 80s. You're gay. That's gay. You do that? That's gay. You like that? That's gay. And so this traumatization of the bullying, the psychologist said, well, maybe you are. You should embrace it. Change your behavior towards it. Accept it. Just like the Democrats. MSNBC was bullied by Fox. You're fake news. You're the fake news media. And so MSNBC has now embraced it. And come the new year, they're now going to be opinion. Fake news. They fell for the trap. You see LGBTQ then rise up as a group and start demanding that the Constitution be destroyed to have new laws specifically tailored for them only. And they are able to get it. Thus, gay marriage. And then driver's licenses and birth certificates are able to be changed. And they don't know that the Nazis who are behind all this were part of doing that to the Germans in Nazi Germany, to identify Jews and gays with specific inverted triangles to designate them and label them. And they've done it in America now. That's why Trump wants all of the particular records when he first took over in 2025 at the beginning of the year, is because he knew you guys had all labeled yourselves. Thus, he wants to know who's on the list. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was also creating their own list in preparation for their Zion of Utah, using porn. Natasha Helfer got fired and excommunicated because she used medical science in her psychological profession concerning little factories and picture magazine or porn. Wrongly called. The church practices porn. Porn is not porn. The church practices porn. And I would have to give you the correct translation of porn from the Greek. Prostitution in the temple. Who has temples? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Do Mormons have to pay the church through tithing in order to have sex with only a Mormon woman in the temple where they get sealed? Yep. And we also have to pay not to have sex, with a covenant and path of death penalty, which is now named NoFap. And so yes, the church is pure evil, and you can identify it if you just simply read your Bible in that particular case. Every Christian knows the church isn't true. Why don't Mormons? Exactly, because they brainwashed you. They got you. That's the baggage that people take with them when they still leave the church, because they were offended that the church said that Joseph Smith was a criminal, and a rapist, and an adulterer, and couldn't translate, and whatever other lie they tell people, and that Joseph Smith therefore is true as a prophet of Jesus. Where people go, excuse me? I'm out. And so they never know the truth. But yeah, that's the baggage that people take with them. And so all the ex-foes all do videos about what the church claims and accuses Joseph Smith of, to divert away from the church not being Joseph's church. And they got you. These ex-foes get very popular to help never-mos be brainwashed into the lies that the church has gotten you believing in. You didn't do your research. It's all right there in the Joseph Smith papers. That's why I'm not liked by either side. And so, yeah, commercials use psychological manipulation. McDonald's uses psychological manipulation. That's why their restaurants were painted yellow. It's because the psychologist said that that will help people feel like it's a friendly, happy place. And so the Golden Arch is yellow because of that. It's a symbol of a happy place, a friendly, happy place, safe. Getting obese on McDonald's burgers and then having to be forced on Ozempic, which will then kill you. Again, another drug got pulled because it causes cancer. How did it get past the FDA in the first place? If they know that it contained that drug, why did they approve it in the first place? And now they're finally getting around to saying, oh, wait, this causes cancer, sure enough. Well, that's what Big Pharma is doing. It's causing a health crisis so that people become even more dependent on Big Pharma to treat the symptoms, not the causation, which was Big Pharma and their drugs. And so, yeah, there are kickbacks that are given to psychologists because they don't have a Hippocratic oath. Medical doctors are not allowed to take kickbacks from Big Pharma because that would violate their Hippocratic oath. So the hospitals will step in and take the money from Big Pharma on behalf of the medical doctors. Or insurance companies will work with the pharmaceutical companies to approve certain drugs and not others for certain things. And so I saw in the news a couple of days ago, I think, a little girl needs reconstructive surgery on her ear. Ear is kind of important so that you can hear. It's a necessary surgery. But the insurance company is refusing to pay for it, calling it cosmetic. So insurance companies are evil in that particular way, but they also work with Big Pharma to get certain things approved when other things would be better for the patient, as the doctor knows. But the doctor, because of the hospital they work for and because of the insurance company and Big Pharma, doctors are limited on what they can or cannot prescribe. So doctors are being put in bondage in America because of psychology and Big Pharma. So, have I covered everything sufficient for this? Because that was just the news, is that the world now knows that Utah is obsessed with psychology and causing harm to the people and going against the act from 1963 of John F. Kennedy before he was assassinated. His last and final act. That's what got him assassinated. So yeah, I told you the LDS hospital ended in 74. Intermountain Health took over. Anything else? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I remember the 80s with the phone call that I've told you about, or not the phone, you call this number now if you see your child exhibiting any of these symptoms. In the first year, during commercials, they said, your kid may be depressed. Call this number now and we can help them. And then the next year, it was the same symptoms. Now they're saying your kid may be gay. Call this number now. And then the next year, your child may be a terrorist. A gay, depressed terrorist. They're trying to get the public to do the accusing to distance from the psychologist doing it. Because they couldn't go out and tell people, oh, you're mentally retarded. I can help you with that. There's still a deep stigmatism against mental treatment because of feelings and emotion crap. And so that's why they branched out to commercials, to TV shows, to movies, to the government. The government, here especially in Utah, they're expert witnesses now when they're a fraudulent business. They're labeled as a legitimate business in Utah when they're not. And that's why KSL keeps promoting it, not just because they're church owned. Needing to protect psychology because the church has family services that transitioned from being nursemaids to mothers. What's it called? Whatever that particular type of woman is who helps with birthing of babies. Into a priesthood run where it's now becoming associated with what would become for Strengthening Church Members Committee in '85, so that those Mormons who need to be activated end up going to family services. And so when they plotted to have me arrested for daring to file a petition for a redress of grievances, they had gone to my parents to have my parents go see a therapist, to tell them about my problem. That was also a trap to get more clients, to get my parents involved. As parents are going there thinking it's for me, when the psychologist is actually trapping them for them. But nonetheless, I'm still pissed. But yeah, they then used that against me when they locked me up. They were trying to frame a case against me when they didn't have any, like Tyler. And they eventually had to put me in a black site location. And so this is somewhat what it is. It's a place that's supposed to be away from the general public. It's a gated community with a wall to keep everybody in. And that's an indefinite living facility to house mass numbers. And when they say they have resources, Gail Miller's concentration camp of hell of human trafficking, if it had resources, as they say it does, then we wouldn't need this. But the problem's gotten worse. Which means they don't have resources. Seriously, dear God, they just throw out the word and they think that that's going to pacify the public, and it does, I guess. But when you see the platform, what really is going on, you realize, no, resource is the wrong word. This is a concentration camp of human trafficking. The people who run the building are the ones who are going to get funded the money. And of course, as a corporation getting free money from the government to run this operation, they're going to hoard as much as they can and spend as little as they can. This is the practice with this kind of economy that we have. And Reagan's tinkle-down economics didn't help. That just made the problem worse. Those corporations now extort our government to say, well, if you don't keep funding us, we're going to have all these employees without a job. You don't want that, do you? And so civil courts get created so that corporations don't get criminally busted. So yeah, that's last year. Everything was hitting the fan, but yet they still tried to keep coming out with more and bigger treatment centers, and then saying, oh, we've got these treatment centers, but they're not staffed. We need more staff. We need more people to go into the schooling to get educated, to come work for us. Keeping the cycle going. Human trafficking, profiting off of torturing other people. So, opiate of the masses. This is the real addiction. They claim addictions are addictions. No, drugs are addictive. Anything with a chemical that goes into your body is addictive. Your eyes dilating because you see a woman who is beautiful, lovely, of good report, and praiseworthy, that's not an addiction. But yeah, the church really pushed that for the blacklisting, and then expanded it beyond porn sites, and then went to social media sites, and then apps and stuff. I understand ChatGPT and other chat boxes are no longer allowed for children. Because of all the suicides. But yeah, AI now is being programmed with psychology. That's why it's got a revenge feature in it. If you do not conform and comply to the AI program, it's designed to attack you, to punish you in some sort of way, to control your behavior, to get you to do what they want you to do. And that's what I'm fighting YouTube with, not just Google and Microsoft now, that Skynet is now operational for. So, yeah, this will lead to our destruction. It's just a matter of which one of the myriad numbers of things that are being used to destroy our nation will be it, or if there'll be a combo involved for the final trigger event that takes place, so that the Nazis can get revenge for losing the war by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints using them to that end for their 200-year-old plot. Alrighty. I don't know if this video will get uploaded anytime soon, but it's recorded now.